So, SUSE, Mothership SUSE, has approached the openSUSE community to open discussion about rebranding openSUSE. Mostly because they're concerned about brand confusion and infringing trademarks. I'm going to play little tidbits of this conference to shed a little more light on this, and then towards the end I'll explain where I stand on this whole issue. And spoiler alert, I'm more or less in favor of it for a few reasons that I will get to. So we're going to play a little bit of this.
But I want to say this, that SUSE is committed to the growth of openSUSE community. I want to make sure that I'm on record, and it's being recorded, you see me saying it, but we have concerns about our brand confusion and the infringement of trademarks. So I want to talk about trademarks.
So he basically just talks about how if you don't use a trademark, if you don't defend your trademark, you end up losing it. And that's been more and more apparent in the last few years when it comes to trademarks ending up in court. You don't use it or defend it, you lose it. Now they're concerned about that happening to SUSE and their Chameleon, which is their trademark, not openSUSE's trademark. Okay, take that back. It is openSUSE's trademark, but SUSE owns openSUSE. So therein you see some of the problem. Now, having seen this, do you remember the logo competition that happened, I don't know, what, 3 months ago or so? 4 months ago? I don't remember. It's just dated. I don't see a date. Anyway, now this makes a lot more sense. Why would you need to have a logo competition for a new logo unless you're going to rebrand and change logos? Now it makes a lot more sense. The openSUSE logo that won is this one. So that's as big as I can get it, I think. Okay, there you go. That is the one that won the openSUSE competition. And bear in mind, it's probably, openSUSE name is probably going to go away at some point. And Tumbleweed, these three tied, and this one is Leap, this one is Slow Roll, this one is Kalba. So with that in mind, looking back on this logo competition, it makes a lot more sense. Because a lot of people were saying this is not needed. We don't need this. Well, guess what? Yeah, it's there. It's here now. All right. Let me switch back. So I mentioned that they were using, I think I mentioned, this is take two. I might have done it in the first one. They mentioned Red Hat and Fedora being upstream to Red Hat. They changed it in 2003.
Remember this. This started out really bad. I was a Red Hat fanboy when I was in college. 7.1 was my first distro. And I remember when this happened, and it was a few years before it got better. But now, if we look at this, it's hard to argue that Fedora isn't a vibrant community, that Fedora is healthy and is expanding, and Red Hat, they're doing just fine over there with their brand.
They're correct. Fedora is Fedora. And Fedora has a very good name to itself. Not everybody in the community likes Fedora, but there's no disputing that Fedora has made a real impact in the Linux community, without a doubt. Okay, so this is where they talk about the logo competition and what could be, sort of.
But the community voted for this, and it was the open process. The votes came in. There's a little hiccups in the community, but we voted on it. And I think it's good. It's a direction forward. It separates us looking like SUSE. It makes openSUSE have start having its own identity. But it could be this. Where's the gasp? Who's gasping? Okay. Something like this. But if you look it up, it's actually not one other operating system. It's actually two different other operating systems. I did some research. Did you know that? You didn't know that. Yeah, I actually did some Googling on that, right? But it's kind of
Okay. Well, a little bit more.
time that we get our own name. We're upstream from SUSE, and maybe it's about time that we have the conversation about having our own name for this organization. So this is a conversation only. Nothing is setting stuff.
Okay, so I wanted to highlight this screen right here. Conversation only. There is no timeline. This is not a pressing issue. Community input is needed. There's several places that you can get involved with the discussion. Please be nice and respectful. That's all I ask. They're talking about this on their news group, on their forums, on Reddit, probably Facebook, I don't know. But I know they're involved in Reddit, they're involved in the forums, and they have their own mailing list that they are discussing this, and it's being discussed, as you can imagine, quite vehemently. So this is going to be kind of a shot across the bow to openSUSE, but I'm going to answer his question right here.
And of course, anyone who goes to a big conference, you mentioned you're working on openSUSE, and they go, "Oh, you still exist," or even more cutting, asking the niche, why is openSUSE so niche?
I can answer that. YAST. One word. YAST. It sucks. I love openSUSE Tumbleweed. And if they suddenly dropped YAST off the face of the earth, I wouldn't be disappointed. Simple. So I'm just going to stop it on this slide right here. This I like. Just stop using the name openSUSE everywhere. And whatever openSUSE name becomes, hopefully not geek something, whatever openSUSE name becomes, just don't use it. Just like Fedora. Fedora doesn't say anything about Red Hat, as far as I know. So instead of openSUSE Tumbleweed, it's just Tumbleweed. Leap, MicroOS, Aeon, etc. So in that case, instead of me saying I use openSUSE Tumbleweed, I just use Tumbleweed or Tumbleweed Linux. And one of the arguments in this openSUSE conference discussion, I think it was in the mailing list, it was brought up, and there's too many responses for me to find it again. It was brought up that if you search for Tumbleweed, you get openSUSE Tumbleweed on the 4th page of Google. Well, that's not unlike Fedora. If I search Fedora in Google, I'm going to get a bunch of pictures of hats. If I search for Arch in Google, I'm going to get a bunch of pictures of archways. It's no different. You just add Fedora Linux to it, it comes up number 1. You add Arch Linux to it, it comes up number 1. Tumbleweed Linux, no reason it can't be number 1. Leap Linux, no reason it can't be number 1. It all comes back to, if you want to use Fedora as the example, there's your example. It's just Tumbleweed. Doesn't matter what the overarching mothership is. So the rest of this presentation is just Q&A, and there were some really good questions. I'm going to post a link to this in the description. I'll also post a link to the mailing list that's discussing it, and the Reddit thread for it, and what's the other one? The forum. I'll post all those links in the description below. There was a couple of really good points in the Q&A part of this. One of them being that SUSE is a well-known brand name, and it helps openSUSE have recognition and discovery in the community. And one of the next questions, I don't think it was the very next question, but one of the next questions said that because SUSE is in the name and we are in the United States, that it actually detracts from the reputation of openSUSE. So it was the same question, but focused on the opposite sides of the fence with the same terminology, basically. And, neither one of them's wrong. Part of the reason that I went from Monjero to openSUSE, Tumbleweed, is because of the longevity of both SUSE and openSUSE. Been around since, the 80s? I think, late 80s? I think, mid 80s. And, just the longevity of that made me think this is the project that I want to get behind. So I'm about to be done with this, and you can go to the links. This is one of the email chain responses. I wanted to highlight a little bit of this because he really says a lot of what I feel about it. openSUSE isn't very open. Even Fedora, which I hate, same, is more open and user friendly. openSUSE has steadfastly committed to being an expert-friendly OS, just like SUSE has always been. The debacle involving YAST printers, YAST firewalls, and cups is just the tip of the iceberg. Amen, brother. There's a little bit more. Despite this rant, once you crawl across 15 miles of broken glass, breaching the firewall enough to install printers and learn the super secret hiding places so you can get an actual usable desktop, not openSUSE is a very stable desktop. Yeah. SUSE was never user-friendly, even when it came on floppies. Yeah. The installation procedure needs to ask the user what kind of network they are connected to, as I documented in one of the above blog posts. If it is a home network, put the default network device in the home zone. I've said this several times. And open up the usual printing ports. Then have a script that adds the driverless printers cups can find. Add the driverless printers cups can find. Yeah, it's the same thing that I've been saying. I love openSUSE Tumbleweed, but they make some less than stellar decisions, I believe, when it comes to their defaults. YAST needs to go away. So, in closing, I want to say this. I am in favor of this move because, in my perspective, from the outside looking in, and I could be wrong on this, this is just how I see it. openSUSE name is owned by SUSE. You can't donate to a name, you have to donate to an entity. So if you're going to donate to openSUSE, you have to donate to SUSE, which is a commercial entity. So why in the world would you donate to openSUSE if you have to donate it to SUSE, a commercial entity? Not a good mix, not a good look. If you're going to work on openSUSE projects, are you working on openSUSE projects for openSUSE, or are you working on openSUSE projects for SUSE? Again, it's just not a good look. And I'm all in favor of having a separation, just like Fedora. If you tell somebody you're using Fedora Linux, they don't understand the relationship between Fedora and Red Hat. They don't know it's Red Hat upstream. I like openSUSE Tumbleweed. Tumbleweed is SUSE upstream. The strange mix in all that is SUSE SUSE Linux Enterprise, SUSE Enterprise. SUSE proper is kind of sort of the upstream for Leap. They pull SUSE into make Leap. So Tumbleweed, SLE, Leap. So how do you separate those out into something that's not an openSUSE project? I have no idea. That's for lawyers that make a lot more money than I do. That's all I can say about it. Again, Just to remind you, this is from the outside looking in. I've been using Tumbleweed for about a year and a half. What I've seen in that year and a half is SUSE is basically telling openSUSE, you're your own thing, do your thing. And then every few months, SUSE comes in and says, we need you to do this. What is the relationship between openSUSE and SUSE? I don't understand that relationship. And I believe the last thing I'm going to say about it is if separation is what it takes to yank YAST out of the mix, then I am 100% in favor. Hands down. And that's all I'm going to say about that. Tumbleweed is awesome. Don't get me wrong. Once you figure out how to incorporate YAST into your flow, Tumbleweed is awesome. It would still be awesome without YAST. But that's all I have for this video right now. And as always, thank you so much for watching.